Hello everyone, Zara Alt here. This is the Midweek Zap, and we're here to get you up to speed on building your business on Google Plus. And today we're going to talk about also your WordPress site. And Mark Pierce, who has been with us before, is an internet security specialist, and he's got lots of tips. And we really want you to ask questions because Mark can get very technical, and so we want to make sure that you're with us along on the conversation. Be sure to ask your questions. Mark, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Zara, for having me on today. My name is Mark Pierce. You may have caught my HOAs called Everything WordPress here on Google+. If you haven't, please join me every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I am the owner of WordPress Specialized Services, so not only do I assist folks with their WordPress needs, maintenance, install, database, moving, you just name it, I can probably get it done for you. But I also teach video tutorials, so not only do I can perform all the duties and backups and all the work that I do, I'm starting to move more into getting a lot of video tutorial content out for all the end users.
Okay, great. And you know, you were with us before talking about security for the WordPress site, and we're just going to carry on from there. And we're talking about, just to be clear, self-hosted WordPress sites. So this doesn't all work for WordPress.com. I just want to be clear about that for everyone. So I know that many people ask you this question. I thought my hosting company did the backup for me. Tell us about hosting company backups.
Absolutely. Now, this is fantastic that everybody asks this because, why do I need somebody else to do a backup when my hosting company does it for me? Well, let me explain a scenario that happens to a lot of people. And this is very unfortunate because most companies, and we're going to share others that don't do it this way, they run what's called monthly backups. Fantastic. I do appreciate that, right? Now, look at, if you work on your site, you're an active blogger, you're posting every day, or like myself, you're developing a membership site, adding videos and pages, this is what can happen. Okay, the backups usually run on a certain day each month. Say they run maybe the 25th, 28th, or even the 30th of the month, right? What if you worked fervently all the way up to the 27th and it crashed on the 28th and the backup ran on the 30th? What do you think would happen? You would lose all of your work, okay? So their backups is going, and it's unfortunate this does happen, so I usually try to let folks know this because I'm not trying to scare anybody into hiring me to do this work. What I'm trying to do is educate everybody out here on Google Plus and all over the internet what can and will go wrong. So be careful.
Okay,
Now,
and then you know what? I have a question for you, and that is, what is the level for handing it off to somebody to do it for you, someone like you, or doing it yourself? What is the level of technical knowledge that you think is the cutoff point?
that's another great question. Quite honestly, I think anybody can capture their own backups through using a popular plugin, and we can talk about some of those, but we're not going to go into detail. For instance, I use Backup Buddy. Now, just remember, just because a company sells you a piece of software or says this plugin is going to back up, well, of course, it'll probably work. Your problem comes when you try to restore your site to the previous state from the last backup captured. Now, unfortunately, most people, and I was in this crowd too originally when I first got started with WordPress, I thought I had it all covered. Well, then all of a sudden I went to restore my site and it broke. It didn't happen. So I had made the #1 mistake. I took them for face value that this is going to work. Well, the #2 mistake that I made, Zara, and this is one I want to tell everybody, you should never, ever, we call it redundancy in the IT world, but I don't want to go there. Basically, your backup should have a backup. Now, most folks.
Right. I know we're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the show, but right now I just want to clarify for folks what say that happened, worst case scenario, you have your backup and you want to restore. I just want to save people time and trepidation, and that is, what is the level of technical expertise that someone would need to do that restore, saying their backup work?
In my own opinion, not everybody's going to agree with me. I think you should be an intermediate user.
Okay.
Uh, that's the basics. But a entry level person could run and capture the backup. Just so you know, there's two. This is a mixed answer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can be at a introductory user level and install the plugin and capture the backup. Anybody can do that. Where the hard part comes in, restoration or migration. That takes an intermediate level, or a person who's actually successfully restored their site.
Okay. Okay, super. And I just want to thank a few people who are here today. Lee Rickler is here. Hi, Lee. Here, let's pull this up. Hi, Lee. Putting the kids to bed. And Coach G. Moore is here. Hi. Glad you could join us today. And Sean Mahan wants to be here, but he has to come back at a different time. I've got somebody knocking at my door, of course. And I think Tammy is here, and Heidi is here. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to thank everybody who's here today, and thank you for being here, because this is a lot of technical stuff. So be sure to post your questions. Okay, Mark. Let's go on to all those plugins that tell us that they will back up our WordPress site. There's a host of them. I mean, if you do a web search, it's like overwhelming how many there are. So tell us how to go through the sort and figure out which are the ones that are really going to work and be the most helpful, or are there any at all of all those plugins that are really going to help us?
Okay, sure. Actually, there's a lot of them that work quite well, and I don't want to name any particular one, but just be careful here, because some of them work well that I haven't even tried to use. So if you're just looking for the best, just like anything else we do out here, when we're checking if somebody's plugin is secure and we should try to install it, because I always say there might be some malware in it, you research the developer. Well, you do the same thing in regards to selecting a good backup plugin or software or system, because, by the way, we're going to talk later about there is a backup system that is provided, but you might pay extra money for it. So I would think the easiest way to approach this is research and take the time. And if you don't have time and you're busy, most people are, because they're running a business, they don't want to do this. That's where I come in. I'll take care of it for you, because I give away the license to you, so you don't have to purchase the backup plugin. Plus, I do other things, but let's just get to the point. The idea is...
And I just wanted to mention that Lee is backing you up on your comments. He said, excuse me if I missed it, but when backing up, I'm presuming you're talking about websites. Yes, we are, Lee. The skill level could be fairly low, but you need to be at a level where you can fix things if or when they go wrong, and as Mark Pierce said, at least intermediate level. And while we're doing this quick break, Tammy Durden, hi Tammy, says hi. And Luc Jalois, redundancy, back up your backup. That's it, Luc. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. Sorry. Just so.
Thank you, Lee, by the way.
3 plugins.
I would be careful with the plugins. Just do your research, everybody, okay? And by the way, I'm providing free services in the form of video tutorials. So let's say you want to learn how this stuff works. If you become a member of my Everything WordPress community, you're going to gain access to video courses how to capture and move sites as well as restoring sites. So that's a little perk for my community, but I'm telling you, I'm not going to give this stuff away just for free. You're going to have to come at least join my community, and then all the material is pretty much free from there, right? So if you want to see me do it live, I'll do it live for you.
Okay, great. So what you're really recommending to our viewers is that you need to be very, very, very careful if you start doing it yourself, because just like Lee said, you may start in on your restore process and then something goes wrong, and that is where you can get stuck. That right in the middle of the restore process, there's going to be some technological challenge that keeps you from actually restoring your website. And I just wanted to mention, I know we've got Lee and Luke here, and people who do a lot of this, and redundancy is the key. So let's do, what can go wrong when I'm capturing or running my backups? What can go wrong?
Well, a lot. So what I'm going to do is give you the simplest things that can go wrong. But as those who, like Lee and the other folks who join us today, understand, a lot can go wrong. And a lot of the stuff is based on your limitations that your hosting service provider puts upon your account. So don't forget that, number one. That's when I do a site assessment, I'm assessing that all the required settings on your server side are compatible with the backup software, and you should also do it manually. Enough of that. So what you want to make sure to look for, here's what can go wrong. When I say everything, I mean everything. But let's assume we're having a great day, okay? Mm-hmm. We start our backup, or restoration, excuse me, from the last backup. Depending on the type of software you use, what can happen is there could be problems with the database itself. A lot of folks forget not all backups are good. So the database that you're restoring could be corrupt, and you won't find out until you restore it, right? So that's number one. I want to keep these real simple. And number two, this is the most common problems I see. A lot of the backup software that you're running, they'll advertise their one click, but they're not telling you what goes on behind the scenes. So let's assume you do your one click and it just stalls. Well, why? Well, the reasons why the backups will stall during the restoration is because, first of all, they're trying to pull your database and put it back where it's supposed to be, restore that, but you're also restoring everything. Full backups. We're not talking about partial backups or database only. So there's two types. I should clarify. There's a full backup, is what I recommend, and a database only, which I only recommend if you're willing to lose a lot of information, okay? Because it only does a partial backup. So let's go to the next point. Okay, so let's assume that you start the restoration process, it's looking good, and all the green arrows are popping up, and all the bells and whistles are looking great, and all of a sudden it just stalls. Big error message pops up and says something about your database password, or the database is timed out. Timeouts are real common because, so the stall itself of the restoration happens because it's not that your software that you're using is bad, okay, or that you're doing anything wrong. It's the limitations that a shared hosting company puts upon your services. A lot of folks.
So let's just stop for a minute and talk about that choice of a shared hosting company, and because I think a lot of people use a shared hosting company, and what the pitfalls can be from doing that.
Okay, sure, and absolutely, most of us do use it because it's being startup companies or small businesses. We are taking the services because it's less expensive, number one. But you're also sharing resources with other users on the same server, so that's also a security problem. But that's another story, another day. Okay, so what happens is, let's say it's the peak of the day, and you got, maybe let's say 50, 60 to 100 users, or they're all tapping into the same server. They have to put, the hosting company has to put a limitation on what's called scripts. Now, the easiest way to explain this is, or database scripts as well, is when you run a restoration through backup software, it is a really cool tool that does a lot of things for us. That's why we like it. And one of the things it does, it runs a special script. Well, scripts that run against a hosting account, like a shared account, are programmed by the shared because they know the resource is going to be used. The hosting company says, I can't give you all that, so they put these timeout limitations on. So I see a lot of timeout problems. What it means is you can't run that script on my server for more than 30 seconds. Well, I needed 32 seconds, so it fails. Okay?
Okay,
That's
now I have a question. So, can we, as just regular human beings, who aren't particularly technically savvy, can we do something about that, or are we just stuck?
I apologize, by the way, if I'm being too technical. That's not my intention. I want to reach everybody here today. There's pretty much nothing you can do about it. You can go back and ask your hosting company, can they please consider this? But they'll just say, well, they have what's called account guidelines and restrictions. And they will say, according to Article 3.4.2.5a, right, we can't allow that. And so they have a way around it. So no.
So essentially, as a user, you're screwed.
Yes, yes, and most people don't know this because they find out when they call the hosting company, well, you're using too many resources on your database. I've actually had my site go into a suspended mode because I have a shared account. I will be moving to a dedicated server in the near future, but for today's conversation, when you have a lot of traffic and a lot of business or a major membership site that the resources are being there's a lot of draw off the server that you're communicating with. Mm-hmm. What happens is they have to put limitation or they're losing money because they're giving you too much bandwidth. That's the easiest way to explain it. So these limitations are out of our control. This is why I do what's called a site assessment. I need to share it real quick. The site assessment that I do, I actually have a built-in or a plugin I use that actually runs a analysis of your server settings one by one, so I can tell you exactly why it's going to fail before it fails. So this is a service I believe people need, and it's relatively fairly priced, I believe. And what I do is I go in there and run it, then I give you the analysis report and breakdown, just so you know. And I will not. I'll actually pull away and not take the job because I don't feel comfortable with that. I want to give them the best services they possibly can get. Now, I can still do what's called a manual backup, but they're looking for the automatics and stuff that's being ran on a consistent basis. And also, I take care of your storage. I don't charge extra for that as well. So that's kind of where that discussion goes, though.
Okay, all right. So that's very helpful because what we as non-technical people need to know, because we want our business to run. We want to be spending our time, creating content, and if we're, active on Google Plus, we're communicating with other people. That's one of our main things that we do. So we need to know what our limitations are, so that if we think that we're backed up and we're not able to restore, we need to take some further steps. And so I think one of the points of what we're talking about today is when does someone know where their limits are, and how do we know? And you just explained one way, that you can hire, I think I'm understanding you correctly, a one-time scanning so that you're aware of what your limitations are, and then you have the ability to make a decision about what are you going to do next. Because the worst case scenario is losing the information on your site and all the plugins. Am I correct? So if you do just data, you still have lost everything that your plugins will do. Is that correct, Mark?
Oh, absolutely. You lose everything.
Yeah. So, there's a cost and time factor involved in making an evaluation about your backup and your website and taking care of it, your WordPress site, and that is that if you're going to be 2 days down on your website because your backup didn't work and your restore stalled because you're on shared hosting, and I just have to pull this up from Luc Jalois. Anything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. Murphy's Law. Luc, that's it. That's what we're trying to address today. Thank you. That I love a chuckle. So we need to take the steps to know exactly where we are in our, for lack of a better word, in our exposure to losing everything. Is that correct? And one of the ways that a technical person like you can help a non-technical person like myself or a number of the members of our audience is that you can do an evaluation, a site evaluation, and say, hey, you're cool, good to go, if anything goes wrong, you're all set up to be able to restore. Or, hey, you're not cool, this backup is blah, 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 whatever the reasons are that it's not going to work correctly, and that your shared or that your shared hosting may present problems when you actually go to restore. Am I summing that up correctly?
You are. Just so you know, thank you, Luc, for bringing this up. It will go wrong. Now,
Yes.
Let me explain something. You're absolutely right. I can do all that. Now, I even tell you, you don't even have to hire me after the assessment. You're right. It's a one-time fee. I call it a site assessment. And it's on my site at wpbackupservice.com. Just go to the services page if you want to see what I actually do. Now, here's the deal. I cannot guarantee anybody out here that's in our industry, we should never guarantee that we can restore or migrate a site. I do not guarantee it. It's not in my contract because it's impossible to guarantee that I can move your site successfully or restore it. I'll tell you why. Because the variables that I'm talking about, it's not that I or all these other folks are incompetent. We're doing a great job. We have our hands tied, Zara. All right? Our hands are tied literally by the hosting account that the person is parked at for their site.
That's right. Let me bring up a comment from Lee again. I run an easier test than Mark Pierce. If you say you're using Stack 'em High, hosting companies like GoDaddy, I cannot work with you.
Okay, that's it. That's a good.
That's his limits because there's really no way for someone like you to guarantee what can the restoration. There's no way to guarantee it. So one of the ways that you or Lee or Luc, for that matter, can sort the clients that you work with is to look at where you are and possibly make some suggestions for changes before you even work with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you, Lee. That's absolutely a great policy. I considered that doing the same thing, but I wanted to not leave. There's a small percentage or a fair amount of people that I can successfully work with them, even though they're on the shared servers. But he is right. I'm going to have a lot more problems. Therefore, I have to tell everybody what my restrictions are and not guarantee my work. But you're going to learn more in one session with me or anybody that does this, by me educating you on providing you the results, and you can ask me any question. By the way, this is a video HOA. You can record this, by the way. I encourage this, or take me to Skype. The idea is it's okay if you don't hire me to restore or move your site. That's fine. I don't care about that. I care about giving you tangible, valuable information that is not being shared to the WordPress community. That is a problem. I don't like the idea that, and I am going to have to say something a little derogatory because it needs to be said. Okay, when these companies are selling their products and saying, buy our backup software, they're not telling you anything of what we're telling you. They're telling you, oh, it works in one click. It's all a big sales pitch, people. That's unfortunate because they should be saying, but here's some restrictions you may run into, then I'd gain a lot more respect. I'm not seeing this anywhere. They're all saying, we got the solution. You just buy our plugin and you're finished. It's done. No problems. You'll be proud of this. We guarantee our product. But when they go to guarantee, the small print is going to say, you have restrictions. I'm sorry. It's outside of our control. Call your hosting provider. Okay? So
Yeah.
that's my high horse for today. That annoys me. I don't like that. I like to be straight up and tell people the truth. Okay?
Okay, and then Lee has another comment, and that is, and it's so true, Lee. Lee says you need to treat your website as it is your shop window to the world. If you had a bricks and mortar shop and you tried to fit a new front window, it would fall out. You'll lose business. That's a great analogy, Lee, and why I felt it was so important to have this discussion today and to have someone like Mark here on the show to help people understand the perils of being naive. I think that's the best way to put it. That um, okay, and then Luke has a follow-up because we're going to get to the last part of what we wanted to cover today. Luke says, are you serious about your internet presence? Your own piece of internet, your own website, then get a dedicated server to host it. So
Absolutely.
Bars, just dedicated server, and you skip all that shared hosting, you all are being so helpful to our audience, not only the people who are here today, but the people who are going to be watching in the future, because I truly do think that it is naivete on the part of a lot of small business owners and people just starting out, because the advertising, just as Mark said, the advertising is, oh man, this is so slick and you don't have to worry and everything's, cool and press one button and you're a done deal, is really misleading people about the perils that await them on their website, because as everybody has said today, it will go wrong.
Absolutely.
It will, it's just a matter of time. It's sooner or later, and anyone who's had it go wrong is including Mark. It happened to Mark.
Yeah.
So anyone who's had it go wrong can tell you what an incredible nightmare it is. And I know when Luke was on our show before, he was redundancy. And so, Mark, let's get to the last part of what we wanted to address today, and that's backup for your backup.
Absolutely. Now, I have one other point, but we're going to run out of time. So the backup for the backup, I'm going to be kind of quick about this. You should always have it. So what is it? Well, I think some folks here, which Lee and Luke know, you must do what's called perform a full manual backup. The manual way, meaning I go into a FTP program, file transfer protocol, I connect to your hosting account. I take 3 folders and some other files within the install folder from your WordPress site and manually back that up onto my backup drives that I have here, and then I put them up on Amazon as well if I need to. That way I can restore that site manually for you, because inevitably that's what's going to save you at the end of the day. Now, I'm not going to go into details how to do that on this HOA, but just be aware, it's not as easy as you think it is. It's not just copying files. You actually have to do much more than that. So I'll leave it there. The final thing I wanted to touch on is I was told by somebody who said, what I'm doing is completely out of date. Why would I hire you to back up my site? And I said, oh, great. I feel the love, right? And he said, and he was right, but let me tell you, there's pros and cons to this final solution. It's called WordPress shared or managed hosting. WordPress managed hosting. Now, in a nutshell, the company that does this, there's upcoming companies, it's WP Engine. I am not promoting them directly. just so you know. Here's what happens. You pay a very high monthly fee of $29 a month for one account, and if you have two, they want $100 a month to completely back up, restore, and fully optimize to secure your WordPress site. Sounds great, right? It's kind of spendy. So if you want to make that choice, so be it. Good luck. Some people like that choice because they don't want anything to do with it, but they don't mind paying this high, outrageously high, I think, price. But there are some perks. Just remember, restrictions are, just briefly, they're very limited. They are restricted of what you can put on your site. They restrict what plugins you can use, what backup solutions you can use, also what security options you can use. I have a problem with that. So the average user doesn't. But most people will run into problems, and then you have to shift hosting at the end of the day. So just so you know, that is an option.
Right, and I think there's a distinction for WordPress users between people who have a blog because they're having fun and they want some followers and they get all that, and the people who are using their blog as another place, as that place, the repository of their content for their marketing, for their business. And in that case, it's incredibly, incredibly important. And Luke has one more comment here. You need to chase SPOF. Did I say that correctly, Luke? Single point of failure, or get a professional to chase them for you and wipe them out, all of them.
Very good.
And I think for most of us who are non-technical, we want that professional, and we need that professional help, because chasing single point of failure is something I myself can't do. Okay, and I think that once again, when we look at ourselves in a professional manner, we need to recognize our limitations, and get help on our limitations, because that is truly proceeding in a professional manner. And then, Mark, I want to bring something up from Sheila Hensley. She says, I've seen Mark's site and videos, very good stuff. Good common sense approach for the uneducated. I being one of the uneducated. Sheila, I have to agree with you. I really know nothing about this stuff. So, Mark, there you go, your own personal testimonial.
Hey, thank you, Sheila. Yeah, thank you very much, Sheila. I'm glad to hear that feedback. I definitely appreciate it.
Oh, and then we've got time for one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap up here. And then Tammy says, how do we get a dedicated server? That's a good question, Tammy. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to have to give you the quick answer because we're out of time. I'll get into the stream and do more answering of more detail later, but just in a nutshell, most people go through their existing hosting company who provide the dedicated server packages, but you'll find out that they're not always the right solution. So you want to research companies who strictly deal with dedicated servers, and it's not very easy. Get some help, because what you're paying for is it's going to cost you, $150 to $200, maybe even more a month for that server. You got to know how fast it is and a lot of variables, and what it's going to benefit your company to have that server in the first place. So that's a complicated, long short. That was the short answer, but it's really a long, sought-out, detailed answer.
Super. And Mark, here's a reason that we're so glad you're here today. And why is it showing backwards? Sorry, folks. I don't know why it's going backwards on us. Anyway, I led online. And Heidi, hi, thanks for being with us. Heidi says, I had no idea that websites need to be backed up. I thought they are safe on the server. Why are they not?
I kind of explained this earlier, so you might want to go back and watch the show again. But in a nutshell, they are once a month. But how it fails you is if you work 27 days before the backup runs on the 30th day, worked your tail off, and it failed just before the backup runs, you lose all your data. That's the quick answer.
Okay, super. So we need to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for being here at the Midweek Zap. And Thank you, especially Mark. You have been so helpful, especially for all of us non-technical people, and all the techie people are just echoing what you're saying. So we all need to listen. We all need to take your advice. I want to thank our super audience, all you Zapsters, for being here today. And next week, we're going to be talking more about thinking of yourself as a business person and how you develop your business persona with Sandra Watson, who has run a number of businesses. So join us next week. And Mark, let's say goodbye to everybody. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you
See
next
ya.
week.